What is up, good people? It's Tony Wiggins here with Locked On Jaguars on a Monday. The franchise tag, they're throwing them around. How will it affect Jacksonville? Will they franchise tag anybody? I don't think so. The other thing is this. It's time to get into free agency before we do these mocks. And I'm going to tell you why these things are time sensitive. And also, it's almost like a game of poker. We're going to discuss all of that today here on Locked On Jaguars. Stand by.
Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, good people? Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. And you start here with us every day on Locked On Jaguars because you make us your first listen, and we greatly appreciate that. Reminding you that we are also free on all platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. You never have to pay for Locked On Jaguars. What's going on, y'all? It's been a nice, long weekend. I finally had a weekend where, no, I was not sick and in the hospital. So that's a good thing. I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about free agency. We're going to talk, it's post-combine. Everyone's gotten that out of their system. You've seen the evaluations. What you see in the combine can affect what you do in free agency. I just want you to know that. Like when you saw all those wide receivers running all over the place. And I gotta get to that too in just a second when we're going to talk about speed. But I'm going to let you know we're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss how time sensitive it is for the Jaguars and for other teams, and how really it's a game of poker. We'll talk about all of that stuff. I want to tell you, though, about what I'm going to do starting tomorrow for the rest of this week. I'm going to give you 4 different scenarios, right? And then I'm going to tell you what the scenarios are going to be about. I got to tease this. I know I'm teasing it early instead of getting today's show out. But today's show is very, very important to what I'm about to tell you that I'm going to do. Over the next 4 days, I'm going to have a different free agency class every day. And then that's going to lead me to do a mock draft that's going to have me have a different mock draft every day. First segment, the rest of the week, is going to be on free agency. The second segment for the rest of the week is going to be on who I would choose in the draft based on free agency, and if it has any bearing on it. It probably does. Third segment is we're going to put the whole team together each day, and I'm going to tell you who we ended up with. And I'm interested in your feedback. Don't give me feedback after day 1 or day 2. Wait until you see it all before you give me feedback. We're doing that the rest of the week. Today, I'm going to tell you why it's so important, and I'm going to give you some rules or some thoughts that I go by when I'm trying to decide how I'm going to do this. And first and foremost, it's almost, and I know we all do it and it's all fun, but it's almost, especially when your team has a lot of cap space. Now, if you have a good football team, it's easy to have a mock draft because if you let people go, that means you're so good you can't re-sign everybody. You're probably not going to go out and re-sign other people, because if you're going to do that, you just re-sign your own players, right? So real good teams, those playoff teams, they kind of let guys go and then kind of get guys in the draft. And a lot of those teams come back too on the second and third leg of free agency, meaning instead of going after the A-line players, they'll go after the B and C guys that just fill needs. And then they'll wait till after the draft and see what veterans are out there, because they can take a chance on guys for 1 year just to sort of get them over the hump. Sort of like Melvin Ingram with the Chiefs. You know, Baltimore is one of those type teams. A couple of years ago, Yannick Ngakoue was that guy from Minnesota, but Minnesota started having all these injuries and got off to a slow start that they bailed and they traded him. So this is very, very important that we discuss this. Free agency can be a tell for teams that pick very high in the draft. I'll use our own Jacksonville Jaguars as the guinea pig here. If the Jaguars sign Chandler Jones, you can almost guarantee they're not taking Aiden Hutchinson or Kayvon Thibodeau. Because if you sign Chandler Jones, now I know it's all about team building and taking the best guy, But you can't be silly either. If you sign Chandler Jones to play opposite Josh Allen, you can't use the number 1 overall pick on a guy who's not going to start unless he's a quarterback that you're trying to make sure that you don't ruin him, right? The guy has to start his first day if you're the number 1 overall pick. And the importance of this is this. Somebody asked last week, and I had even brought it up, why would you trade? Why is anybody even talking about trading Josh Allen? Let me tell you why. The reason why you talk about possibly trading Josh Allen is because you would have a situation where you got to figure out whether you want to pay him or not. Now, if you're drafting another guy to be defensive end, that means that you don't think Josh is a 1. You think he's more like a complimentary guy. But his name carries X amount of cachet. So if you draft or sign a free agent at defensive end, and you keep Josh, his numbers are going to go back up. And when his numbers goes back up, his price goes up. So today's price isn't yesterday's price, and tomorrow's price isn't going to be today's price. You got him for another year, and then you got him for the 5th-year option after that. You're going to have a problem if you don't think he's worth whatever these guys are going to go for. And if you don't think he's worth that, you can't pay him that. Bottom line. If you don't think he's worth that money, you can't pay him that money. If you thought he was worth it, you probably wouldn't be looking at a free agent this year to be the alpha, and you probably wouldn't be looking at the number 1 pick this year either. You'd be looking at more of a supplemental guy. So the Jaguars might end up in a situation where if they sign Chandler Jones or Randy Gregory, right? If they do that without making any noise about Josh Allen being traded, what does that tell you? Well, that tells everybody that it tells Detroit, well, you can just sit there at number 2. You ain't got to offer him nothing. And you're going to be able to get Aiden Hutchinson. Or if don't the Jaguars want to tackle. That's what it's going to tell them. So in free agency, you also can't wait until after the draft. You can't wait. These guys are going to sign. They're not going to sit there and wait for all of these teams to go out and get needs, and then they're going to sit there. If you want to play in free agency, you better go get him, whether it's Teron Armstead, whether it's Chandler Jones, and all of these people keep bringing these names up without thinking of the consequences, that what it does is it decreases your leverage. That's why if you look at the thumbnails and the titles, it's called Picking Number 1. I saw where this weekend, I can't remember who it was, I saw people actually talking about it. They were saying, I'd take the Lions' 3rd round pick just to swap 1st and 2nd. And I said, no, you don't. That's not enough. You do not give up the right to have first dibs in the draft for a 3rd round pick, even if you think you're going to get your guy at number 2. You don't do it. You make them give you more. Or you don't trade at all and you just go ahead and take your player. Because you never know. You might not get him at number 2. And that's the part that I want to talk about, because people sell wolf tickets. They are not going to conditionally tell you who it is that they want in the draft to determine or not whether you can move down from number 1 to number 2. You earned the right to have first dibs in the draft, and you need to use it. I'll tell you why you need to use it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. After I tell you guys about Built Bar, I did something that I normally don't do. Y'all, I went out of my comfort zone. I went scrambling through my Built Bars, which is now my snack of choice because of my changes that I've had to make recently. And I was out of salted caramel. You heard me. I was out of salted caramel. But what did I have? I had those puffs. And I had the marshmallowy, gooeyest, creamiest, cinnamoniest coconut marshmallow puff I've ever had in my life. And salted caramel might have a problem. I'm like the guy on Harlem Nights. I'm going to call salted caramel and say, hey, this is your husband. I might not be coming back home. Because let me tell you something. That marshmallow puff is absolutely delicious, and it is the first protein-infused marshmallow. That's right. They're fluffy. They're marshmallowy. They even got this banana one. They got the coconut and the cream pie. Man, it's so good you won't even believe you're eating something that's healthy for you. And the macros are off the chart. Make sure you go to built.com and order your puffs right now. Those puffs are absolutely delicious. Now, salted caramel is still good too, but you need to find your own flavor. But man, I'm telling you, try those puffs. They are absolutely outstanding. And the macros are just like the original Built Bars. They're way, way, way too healthy for you to be tasting this good. So make sure to go to built.com and order those puffs and check them out at bar_built on Twitter. All right, man, we're going to roll along here in segment 2. And I want to just let you guys know right now about NFL YouTube. Please make sure that after making us your first listen every day, make sure you're following Locked On NFL. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. Yours truly is on Wednesdays with my brother from another mother, James Rapine. Listen, man, you do not trade away that choice to pick number 1 if all somebody has to offer you is a 3rd-round pick. Because 1, they're not going to tell you who they pick. There's no rule that says it has to be conditional or who you're going to take. I'll lie to you and tell you who I'm going to take, and I'll take the guy that you want. The last thing you ever want to do is put yourself in a position, all for a measly 3rd-round pick, to tell the Jaguar, to tell the fan base, both of them are even and we'll just take whoever's left, right? So if you're sitting at number 2 and say, we're going to get a guy anyway, so we'll just get an extra 3rd-round pick. Let that guy that they chose become a perennial All-Pro and a guy that looks like he's headed for the Hall of Fame, and let your guy just be good. Pretty good. And see what happens to you. The Jaguar fans got bruised, scarred, and still have scabs on their bodies and their ligaments and their joints from that trash season that this team just had. In fact, they put 2 of them back together. You better not give that pick away for no measly 3rd-round pick. If you are that intent on moving down, you make sure you make a bold move and you get some stuff that's really, really going to help this football team in the long haul. Don't switch. Don't give up that number 1 pick. Just take your guy. It's not worth it because you know what? They might take your guy. And then you're sitting there looking like Boo-Boo the Fool. I don't know. They didn't tell us that. No, don't do it. Take your guy at number 1. All right? Whoever that guy might be. We were talking about timing in the first segment and how important it is for these teams to make sure that they conceal what it is they want to do. And sometimes when you're the Jaguars, when you're picking number 1, but you have all of the salary cap space and you have a need at every position except quarterback, it is extremely difficult for you to hide what your intentions are. And I'm not just talking about the 1st-round pick. I'm talking about those other picks too, because teams are going to have their boards. They're going to know where the value is. And this is also why I saw something that the Jaguars interviewed Malik Willis, and teams were like, people were like, what are they doing that for? Let me tell you what eval is all about. Eval is not just going up there and interview. If you're just going up to interview guys that are the position guys of need for you, then you're going to have a very, very short week. Matter of fact, you can do it in one day. The reason why you're there and the reason why scouts scout is because you need to have a book on these players. You need to have information and data on all of these guys, and it needs to go in your archives because it helps you when you, 1, playing against them. If you know a guy can't throw a 20-yard out, guess what you do? You make him throw a 20-yard out. That's part of the evaluation. 2, you never know if he's going to be a free agent. 3, you don't know where you're going to be. If you get fired and you have to go coach him, you already have a book on him. So scouts do what scouts do. When they're at these events, they scout everyone as if they don't have anything on their team. Okay? They may pay closer attention to certain areas, but scouts just scout. That's what they do. So most of these teams are going to have their board set, and they're going to have it set in different ways. But it still behooves of you to understand that they're watching you. They know exactly what you're going to do. And one of the things that hurts a team in free agency is teams know how team building is supposed to go and how you're supposed to be constructed. People saying the Jaguars need to just focus on wide receivers. Okay, say they go into wide receiver mode. I just mentioned in the opening that it's expected that Devontae Adams. It's expected that the kid in Tampa they're all going to be tagged. Mike Williams, Chris Godwin, he's going to get tagged. I don't think Allen Robinson is going to get tagged. I don't think Christian Kirk, a pure slot receiver, is going to get tagged. Caught over 70 balls last year in the slot, and he can definitely separate. That's an option. If Dallas tags Dalton Schultz, the tight end, that's going to leave some guys untagged, like Cedric Wilson, who I would also take a look at. So let's just say the Jaguars, and I'm going to do all of these scenarios tomorrow, I told you. Let's just say that they reach out, since everyone says how dire the wide receiver core is. It's more than one guy. So they sign one guy in free agency. That's not enough. You need another one, right? So if you want him to be an impact guy, he has to at least be a second or a third rounder, correct? And if you sign a slot guy, that guy has to be an outside guy. So once you sign the slot guy, there are teams that know that you're not taking another slot guy. And if the slot guys right now look like they're going to be somewhere between the middle of the second and the middle of the third round, where a bunch of them are going to go off. So if you're going to get a number one or an outside guy, you better get it in a hurry, because once you got that slot guy, when teams come up, they start seeing you. They know exactly what it is you're looking for. Free agency will tell the story. This is why I'm doing this exercise, because I've told people in the past, it is very, very difficult for you to do a mock draft when you don't know what a team has done in free agency. Like everyone that has Aiden Hutchinson going to Jacksonville. What if Jacksonville, the scenario I gave you, what if they sign Chandler Jones or Randy Gregory? You think they're still going to take Aiden Hutchinson? The only way they do, in my opinion, is if they move Josh Allen. You got to think about that stuff. If they sign a nickel corner, if they sign somebody who can play like a Steve Nelson or somebody to come in here and play the nickel, they're probably not taking a nickel in. They're probably not going to take a corner in the draft. All of these things are tells. If they sign Marcus Williams or Jesse Bates, if he makes it to free agency to play along with Andre Cisco, they ain't taking a safety. The more you start to fill in those squares, the less people think you're going to go in those areas when you're Jacksonville. And the more they know where you're going. You think Jacksonville just needs one offensive lineman? I think they need multiple. So we agree that they need multiple offensive linemen. They need an edge rusher. They need multiple wide receivers. So if they're not there in free agency, where do you think they're going to get them from? You got it, the draft. And right now, the wide receiver core is thinning out, unless, like I said, it's going to have to start being the Cedric Wilson types. You got to take a chance on Michael Gallup. You're going to have to take a chance on. But the one thing I can tell you about everybody I mentioned is they can run. They can run, and they've shown that they can catch balls. So be careful with just this laissez-faire approach to they should do this, they should do that. They got to get this, got to get. I'm going to give you a chance to listen to how difficult it is the rest of this week when I show you exactly how they might have to go about doing that without telling on themselves, right? It's going to be very, very, very difficult. Trust me. I've done this several times, and that's why some of the mock drafts that you come out with, people don't like them, but what they don't understand is some of the things that you already done in free agency mentally. So I'm going to actually share that with you guys coming up the rest of this week. All right. So I'm going to give you some sleeper guys to look for in free agency if you're Jacksonville. I'm going to give you some sleeper guys to look for in free agency. Offensive line, yeah, we're going to talk about Alex Kappa down in Tampa and Laken Tomlinson over in San Francisco. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars after I tell you guys about BetOnline. Man, if you ain't on this, guys hitting 50 points all over, putting 50 burgers on people's faces all weekend. These dudes in the NBA are trying to go for it, man. They're trying to get into the playoffs, especially these older teams with these superstars that know how to play in the playoffs. And just because football's over doesn't mean you need to give up, because basketball is in full steam. And that March Madness is on its way too. And you know how crazy that can get. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance, props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. It's everything. Boxing's coming up. There's a great UFC fight this weekend. All a chance for you to make some Skrilla. You got to head to the website today or use your mobile device to sign up and learn more about the trends and the action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. And your day starts right here with me on Locked On Jaguars. And I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Jaguar. We're talking about the draft, man. We're talking about a fun exercise that we have coming up later on this week. And I'm letting you guys know how difficult it is. It's even difficult for me trying to do it all the time. So it has to be difficult for you guys. First of all, when y'all start putting your free agency list, don't just go out and name the top 5 or 6 free agents like they're all going to come to Jacksonville, because that's not going to happen. Be realistic. Be realistic and understand that there are guys at different levels of their careers, that they're reaching for different goals. Obviously, everybody wants to get money. It's not about the total amount of the money. It's about the guarantee. I will explain this one more time as it was explained to me. The big number in a contract, let's just say if it's 5 years, $100 million. Okay, so you know the $100 million isn't real, right? The only thing that's real in there is the guarantee. The guarantee is usually affected by how big that number is. The way it was put to me was always go 62%. And that might not be accurate, but that was just one person's way of doing it. That the guaranteed amount will always be about 62% or 62.5% of whatever the total amount was. So on a $100 million deal, a guy might get guaranteed $62 million, right? And it might not be a hard guarantee. It might be a true guarantee of like $50 million, but it says $60 million in guarantees. But the only thing that's guaranteed of the guarantee due to injury and other things would be the second number that usually doesn't come out very often. But so when you get into free agency, don't start thinking about per year. And I know a lot of people were doing the per year thing when they were talking about Amari Cooper. Well, he makes $20 million. Yeah, that's what his salary is, but you can probably get him to come down on that a little bit if you give him like an extension with a little bit more guarantee, right? So if you give him a $30 million, say, no, we're going to front you. We're going to give you all of that up front plus another $10 million, but we need you to stretch this out over 2 years to lower your salary. That's how you do that. It's easy. Okay, now he makes $15 million a year. You see what I'm saying? That's what happens. And you can just tell him we're going to front it. We're going to give it to you in the form of a roster bonus, and we'll give you an extra $10 million guaranteed if you just make it a 2-year deal. So now it's a $15 million per year contract, which is about what the franchise tag is, and I think it's a little lower than the franchise tag. So it's always around that back number. Don't get so caught up in that back number in the next few days or the next few weeks or couple of weeks where you're thinking like, oh, the team's going to go broke. Trust me, if the Saints ain't run out of money yet, ain't nobody going broke. Shout out to Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints. But trust me, those jokers over there printing their own money, I don't know what the hell they got going on over there, because they got a backup quarterback. They're paying a boatload of money, at least according to paperwork. So we have to understand that everything is not what it seems in the land of the salary cap. But you're not going to get all the top free agents. You just won't. The one good thing they do have for them, though, I was once thinking today, if Devontae Adams does hit the market, the Jaguars didn't have a chance. I'm not going to say that anymore, because Trevor Lawrence is not Blake Bortles. And Doug Peterson isn't whoever was coaching the team before. He's not. Doug Peterson has some cachet because people have seen him lift that Lombardi up. All right? So, and money talks. If you structure that thing and give a guy more money than anybody can give him in his first 2 or 3 years, and the Jaguars are definitely capable of doing that, and then you come to him with a comprehensive plan of how you're going to build the team and what you're going to do with the number 1 pick and how you're going to go out and get some other guys in free agency. I'd love for the Jaguars to sign 3 top-notch guys and then say, we'll come back after the draft, or we'll come back in phase 2 or 3. I'd love it. I'd love for them to end up with Devontae Adams, Teron Armstead, and Chandler Jones, or Devontae Adams, J.C. Jackson with his man-to-man playing self, and figure the cornerback situation out, and then end up paying maybe Chandler Jones or somebody like that. I'd love for him to do it, because what that does for me is it just says, 1, we're going to trade down, or 2, we're going to go ahead and take another lineman, and we're just going to let him go in there and put him out there and let him battle for it, or 3, we might take another pass rusher and then trade Josh. Or, you know what? The last time we were good, we had 3 pass rushers. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to rotate them all, and we're going to affect the quarterback every single play. Or better yet, if you do it the other way, you're going to move down. We're going to talk about all of those scenarios next week. But the thing that you have to know is everything is possible and anything is possible. You got to pay attention to contract structure, pay attention to all of that stuff. But to recap real quick, I keep the number one pick if you don't offer me at least a second round pick. Because a second round pick, I think, is a day one starter on this team. He should be. Wasn't last year, but he should be. And those guys should have been, right? You get Travis Etienne back. Hopefully he'll be healthy. And that's like having another number one pick. But the thing is you get first dibs. Don't screw around with this. Don't think that you know what somebody else is going to do. Don't believe what they tell you. Get the first pick and take the guy that you think is the best guy. The guy's going to end up in Canton. The likelihood, you say that's the dude right there is going to be a Hall of Famer. In free agency, I'll name some wide receivers, some guys that I'm going to talk about throughout the week. There's some interior players too. A lot of guys got taken off the market because of franchise tag. I don't suspect that Alex Kappa will be one of them. He's a right guard with Tampa. Tampa has a lot of people to pay. They got a lot of stuff going on. Maybe he's somebody you can approach. Guy from Humboldt State came here and worked his butt off, and now he's a very, very good young 26-year-old who can move around. He just ain't some big old dude that's going to let people run around him all day. Laken Tomlinson, who plays left guard out in San Francisco, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to get both of them. I would, I don't think either one of those guys is going to break the bank. I'd sign both of those guys with the one amount of money that you're going to try to give Brandon Scherf. Yeah, I would. I'd do it in a heartbeat. One guy's probably better at pass protection and the other guy's probably better at running it. But I do have confidence that if they were to do that, then that would just leave that one hole on the line at right tackle or left tackle, depending on who the player is that you think is available. So we're going to go through those scenarios. But offensive line will definitely be addressed. Start thinking this way, Jaguar fans. Stop thinking of settling. Stop thinking of being fine. Stop thinking of just putting up with guys because you're familiar. No, none of that stuff. What I need everyone to start thinking about is this. How can we be not just okay or solid, but how can we be great? I heard somebody today saying, just go ahead and franchise tag Cam Robinson again, and you can get a tackle next year. You might not be able to get one of these tackles next year. And the other thing is this. What's going to stop you from doing that again next year and saying, okay, now we can keep Cam Robinson, because instead of going out and using the number one pick. And the thought is that if you just keep Cam Robinson, you can allow another position to come in and develop. Well, if you try to get a tackle next year, he's going to have to develop too, right? And you probably won't be picking number one. Hopefully you're not. Don't prolong the inevitable. At some point, you have to start getting good players and you have to start practicing not paying players more than they're worth. It's not rocket science. But I'm going to challenge you guys to pay attention the rest of the week and see how difficult it is to not show your hand in the draft in free agency. My point is this. If you don't want to show your hand in the draft, then don't get an edge rusher or a left tackle. Hope that you get both of them in the draft. But if you do that, you ain't going to be able to get a wide receiver early. You won't. Sign an edge rusher, they're going to say, oh, they're going offensive line. Sign a tackle in free agency, they're going to say, oh, he's going edge rusher. Either way, if the Jaguars get out here in free agency, they are somehow going to telegraph exactly what they're going to do unless they're going to make another move to free up somebody else. We're going to talk about all of this week, man. You guys make sure you stick in here with me on Locked On Jaguars. I also want to tell you about Locked On NFL Draft. You guys need to check this out, man, because it happens every day with my man Eric Crocker, former NFL player, and my homeboy Ryan Tracy, who covers the Chiefs. Crocker covers the 49ers, and Tracy is an analytics guru. Make sure you check it out because they're going to give you a perspective that you can't get with anyone else here on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. It's available. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast, just like this one. All right, it's man Tony Wiggins with another edition of Locked On Jaguars. You guys keep taking care of each other, and we're going to have fun this week. We're going to have fun this week. Bank on it. You guys take care, and we'll see you next time, and take care of each other.